of our time today will be recorded and captioned. And just to provide everyone with context as to the purpose of this event. So we want to acknowledge that the job offer process can be exciting and nerve-wracking, especially for people from underrepresented populations, as well as women who are often less likely to negotiate their salary. And although it can be intimidating for you to ask, employers are prepared for these conversations. In fact, they often expect it, which is why we are hosting this employer panel and a workshop to provide this space for you to learn about what is included in a job offer, hear from employers about how the job offer negotiation process works, ask questions surrounding the job offers you may be wondering about, and also to get a chance to practice negotiation conversations. So before we get started today, we first want to recognize that the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is located within the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homelands of the Dakota people. We acknowledge the history of broken treaties, genocide, and forced removal of Indigenous peoples from this territory. And we honor and respect the many diverse Indigenous peoples still connected to this land. We know that words alone are not enough, and we must continue to work to educate ourselves and our campus community and hold our community members accountable in supporting, advocating for, and recognizing Indigenous peoples and the land in which we occupy. For more information, resources, and ways to take action, please visit the Native Governance Center website at nativegov.org. And I'm going to put this link quickly here in the chat for you all as well, so you have direct access. All right, so here's the agenda for today. In a moment, one of our employer panelists, Alyssa, is going to start us off with some relevant information surrounding the benefits component of a job offer. So we all have some common terminology going into the employer panel portion of our time together today. Then we will begin our employer panel and open the floor for any questions you may have surrounding navigating a job offer and/or the benefits process. And at various times, we'll be sharing some resources in the chat, so be on the lookout for them. We will announce it before we put them in as well. And after our employer panel, we will move into the negotiation workshop time via breakout rooms, in which you will be placed in a small group with one of our employer panelists who will be facilitating a negotiation discussion practice and/or provide the space to talk more in depth about negotiation and job offers. And as a quick note, the breakout room time will not be recorded. Lastly, we will all reconvene together as a large group for a brief wrap up and provide space to share out what you have learned through our time together today and or ask any final questions. All right, again, welcome everyone and thank you for being here. Joining us for our Navigating Job Offers discussion as our employer panelists are Alyssa Kruger from Magenic Technologies, Edwin Ochoa from PRX, Dennis Hetelved from Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, and Jessica Dam from Hennepin County. We are happy to have you all here today to provide insights surrounding the job offer negotiation process and to answer any questions our audience may have. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Alyssa to share with us a brief overview of the benefits component of a job offer.
Great, thanks. Hi, everyone. Let's see.
And while Alyssa's getting her screen set up, I'm going to share in the chat our Navigating the Benefits of a Job Offer handout link. That way, everyone here can view that as well.
And Taryn, I may have missed an email or two, and I apologize to everyone on the call, but I actually don't have a presentation to share, but I am happy to walk through items. So Taryn, I don't know if you have anything on your screen to share at all. Again,
yes, I do. I can pull the presentation up for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let me just get screen share going again. All right.
I can see that. Thanks. Okay, so when you get an offer and when you take a job, there's often the first thing of thought of as compensation as the money that you get and the paycheck that you take home. But there is a lot more to compensation than most people think. And that's what employers call total compensation. And that includes health benefits like health insurance, dental insurance, vision, retirement plans, which seems like a very long time from now, but helps to start planning early. Leave, meaning leave benefits. So think of things like taking care of yourself if you get injured or sick, or maybe plan to grow your family and have children or adopt children. It could also be taking care of loved ones, loved family members. Other things can just include flexible vacation plans, pet insurance, long-term disability, life insurance. There's a lot of additional benefits and perks too to total compensation. So healthcare. So we'll talk about a few things with healthcare and the definitions around some of these. So I remember when I first took my first job and I really didn't know what to look for and what was good. I didn't even know what a lot of these things meant. So that's very normal and very common. And oftentimes when an employer offers you a job, they give you such things as a benefits overview that includes what your deductible is and what a premium is. So a deductible in health insurance is the amount that you need to reach in order for your insurance to kick in. So people will say my deductible is $1,000 or $6,000. Well, that often means the amount that you either need to pay into or that you need to reach for insurance again to help cover the cost. A premium is something that you pay for usually on a per paycheck basis to help pay for the health insurance. So some companies offer free premiums. They cover the total cost of the premium. The employer pays for it all. And other companies, you pay for a larger portion. Prescriptions. So, prescriptions come up, whether it's monthly basis, you need to take something every day, you need to get a prescription filled, or it's something that, can come up anytime throughout the year. And different insurances cover different kinds of coverage levels. You will have what's called like a generic prescription that most insurances cover very cheaply or for free. And other insurances also, cover different levels of different types of prescriptions. So it's a good idea to look at what prescriptions you're taking, what may you need or might you need, and then you can look at that healthcare like Medicare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and see what kind of level of coverage they have. A copay, kind of what I was explaining with a deductible, is something that has to do with when you go to the doctor, when you fill a prescription, you're going to pay a standard cost. Let's say it's $25. That's your copay. You're basically paying for a portion, like you're paying a set amount for whether that coverage is going to the doctors or the prescription. It's going to be $25. You know what that's going to cost, rather than I'll get to that HDPT later, the high deductible health plan. So a copay is just something that you know what you're going to pay for every prescription and for every doctor's visit. In-network and out-of-network, those are things that you can, your doctors are going to be what's called in-network. So your health insurance is going to cover that. They're going to be accessible to you, and co-insurance will help pay for usually the cost of any doctor's visit or prescription. For out-of-network, you can still go to it. So for instance, Mayo Clinic is not an in-network provider for myself. I can still go to the Mayo, but I'm going to pay a higher cost because it's not covered by the network. Couple things. So like, let's see. So I'm going to jump to the high deductible, sorry. So the HDHP is the high deductible health plan. And this is something that has, as it sounds, it has usually a higher deductible. So again, going back to the deductible, you can, there will be a higher set of money that you have to reach in order for insurance to kick in, either at a percentage or at full cost. So for instance, if you have a high deductible of $3,600, that means for every doctor's visit, every prescription, you would pay whatever that doctor's visit costs, whatever that prescription costs, up until you reach that deductible limit. Once you reach the deductible limit, then coinsurance kicks in again, either at 100% or at a percentage. Disability insurance is, it can be a wide range of things, such as short-term disability. If you are needing to, what it sounds like, be out for a short period of time, usually up to about 13 or so weeks, so a couple months. And oftentimes, short-term disability can, or not oftentimes, sometimes disability can also go into long-term disability. So when you're looking at an offer, also look at whether they cover short-term disability and long-term disability. And there's also some employers decide to offer that, but they may not, you may have to pay for the premium, again, just like you would pay for a health insurance premium. Life insurance. So usually a lot of companies have a basic life insurance policy that they offer to all employees free of charge. The employer pays for everything. So in the event of, something happens to you, you would just pick a beneficiary and your beneficiary gets that portion. Usually it's a number that has to do with your salary, like an equation for that. But most companies have the option for you to purchase additional life insurance. And again, it depends on what kind of coverage level you want. What is your, risk level? Does let's say, for instance, cancer run in your family and you want to have that as a backup for your family. Oftentimes young people who are healthy, they just take what the employer has at the basic level, and that's fine too. The vision and dental insurance is kind of what it sounds like. It's usually carved out separately from health insurance. So vision insurance can cover a wide range of things, and look carefully at the fine details, because when you hear vision insurance, you think, I'll get free glasses, I'll get a free eye exam. The eye exams usually come under the health insurance, and then the vision can really vary. It's sometimes just a voluntary coverage that you enroll in, and it can cover free glasses, it can cover one pair a year or contacts a year, or it could pay a percentage. Similar to dental insurance, it's think of it working similarly to health insurance. There's a deductible. Usually preventative care is usually covered at 100%, same with health insurance as well. And then depending on, if you need cavities filled or a root canal, there's going to be different levels of coverage. So if you're going to have dental work coming up, and that's important to you, or you have, ongoing issues, that may be a benefit that you want to look closely at. And then spouses and dependents. So depending on where you're at in your life, you may be just enrolling, for yourself. And that's usually easier. You don't have to think of anyone else when you're thinking of these deductibles. But if you do have a spouse, if you do have children, you are able to usually add your dependents, what they're called, dependents, onto your health insurance, your vision, your dental, life insurance for your spouse or children. And you'll want to think about that carefully when you're looking at the different levels of deductibles. Maybe you're a very healthy person, but your spouse is very accident prone, and you know that you're going to reach a deductible quickly. And so, maybe or sorry, again, they have a lot of needs. And so you might not want to go with a very high deductible because you're going to be paying a lot. So you'd rather go with a copay plan that has, you're going to pay a set amount. And then I know I skipped over the PPO, HMO. So the preferred provider organization is a PPO, and that's a type of health plan that contracts with medical providers such as hospitals or doctors, and it kind of goes with that in-network that I was talking about. And then let me see if there's anything else I want to share with you guys. An HMO has their own networks of doctors and hospitals and healthcare providers as well, and they've agreed to accept payment at a certain level for services that they have. So I know that's a lot of information, but I think I covered all of them on the slide there.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Alyssa. So we do have another slide here that if you want to just touch on briefly a few of the bullet points here, that would be wonderful.
Okay. All right. Talk briefly about these. So 401k is a type of retirement plan. If you're working at a nonprofit, it might be called a 403b, or like a school has 403bs. So it works the same. Basically, a 401k plan usually works that you put in a certain amount of paycheck. Either it can be pre-taxed or pre-tax or after-tax dollars from your checking account, or your paycheck, and it goes into the 401k retirement account. And that's to be used for retirement. And usually, hopefully, many employers decide to also contribute to the 401k. Look very closely at what they are offering, because I'll give you an example. One of my previous companies said we offer a 25% match, which sounds like a lot. For every dollar I put, they put in a quarter. As opposed to my husband's, they put in 3%. And so that sounds like, wow, 25% versus 3%, that's a lot better of a deal. But if I only put in $1,000, in a whole year, that 25% is going to be a lot less than my husband's, 3%. If I put in, basically he was getting half of a match when I was only getting 25%. And I probably missed a sentence or two in there, but look closely at what percentage they actually do contribute, if they do contribute anything at all. A pension is something that you can receive in a period of time after you've spent with the company. And that pension can grow. And you can also buy, such things as like stock options if they have that. And sometimes there's dividends, like monthly payments that you can take out. And then quickly, I'll touch on the vesting period as well. And the vesting period is something that has to do with basically how long you are at the company, and when you are able to kind of keep that money that the company normally puts into a retirement account. I'll give an example. If there's a vesting schedule that after a year, you're 25% invested, that means that if you work there for a year and you leave, you would only keep 25% of what the company put into your 401k retirement account. If it goes up to 50%, you keep 50. So you'll want to look at how long it's going to take you to be vested. Some companies start you out at 100% vesting. So that means from day one, whatever the company puts in, you would get 100% of that money if you would leave at any time. So look closely, because some people think that, I get 50%, 401k match, which is great. But if you leave within a year, you may be cutting yourself short on that money.
Wonderful.
High level, very rushed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alyssa. I appreciate your kind of overview of talking through all those components. And then a few kind of final things that we wanted to mention, or just to keep in mind when looking at a job offer, is Alyssa had mentioned at the beginning, different types of leave time, keeping an eye out for that in the job offer, as well as the additional benefits, maybe tuition assistance, stock in the company, relocation assistance, or wellness perks. So those are just a few other categories and things to keep in mind when you are reviewing a job offer. All right, gonna switch back here to our other slide. Just a moment. All right. Again, thank you, Alyssa, for the wonderful and thorough information that you just shared. It's much appreciated. We are now going to be moving into our employer panel portion of our time, and we'll shortly be opening up the space for questions. And as a reminder, you can either unmute yourself and ask your question or put your question in the chat. We will be monitoring that. And before that, would each panelist provide a brief introduction of yourself, your name, preferred pronouns, role, and how your role is related to the job offer negotiation process? And I will put this list in the chat for our panelists here. And whoever would like to go first, feel free.
I can jump in. Hey, everyone. My name is Edwin Ochoa, and I am the HR director for PRX, the Public Radio Exchange. We are a leading public media company, but we are not NPR. I find myself saying that quite a bit. So we co-produce shows that you hear on Minnesota Public Radio, like The World, The Takeaway. We also do podcasts like This American Life, Reveal, Ear Hustle, and Song Exploder. So as HR director, I am usually the point person to lead or advise on negotiations with applicants. So I'm a one-person show because we're a pretty small company. So I am seeing recruiting from end to end. I'm also the benefits person and the payroll person. So I've been very versed in all of the different aspects of what an offer entails, as well as working with a lot of recent college graduates and some of the sort of just the things to keep in mind as you're kind of transitioning into like a full-time role. But I'm excited to be here, and I will put myself back on mute.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I work for a company called MISO, Mid-Continent Independent System Operators. We oversee the power grid for about 15 states up and down the Midwest part of the US. So we basically help keep the lights on, as they say. And so what do? I am a senior recruiter with MISO. I've been there for about 15 years, and I help people find jobs, find that next opportunity. And so I'm kind of at that hub, if you will, for negotiations, working between compensation, the hiring manager, and a candidate to find a happy spot where we can make it work for everybody. And I am also excited to be here. Love this opportunity, and looking forward to any questions anybody has. Thank you.
I can go next. I'm Jessica Dam. I am a recruiter at Hennepin County, she, her pronouns. My role is a little bit, it doesn't fully relate in my current role to negotiations. I definitely did a lot of salary negotiations at my last organization. At Hennepin County, a lot of my role in salary negotiation is working with the hiring team. So talking to hiring managers who maybe aren't always very familiar, if they don't hire often, around how that process works. I do talk to candidates about it as well, and kind of explain things from our perspective. And because we're a government agency, we do post all of our salary ranges within our job description. So just talking to external folks, whether it's candidates or other folks, about what that means. and how we are pretty firm within that range as being our negotiation range.
I'll go next. I think that leaves me. So again, my name is Alyssa, and I work at Magenic Technologies. We're a custom software technology company, actually currently integrating with Cognizant Soft Vision. So I'm still technically Magenic though. In my role in HR, we're a very lean team, and I work very closely with our recruiters on onboarding all of our new employees and talking about benefits with them and life as an employee. And similar to Jessica, my previous roles, I've been in HR for 10 years, so I have a lot of background in salary negotiation and offers and working with managers and recruiters alike. I was a recruiter, that's how I started in HR. So I've seen a lot of salary negotiations, but right now my side is more on the tail end of after negotiation and bringing them on board. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you all for introducing yourselves, and thanks again for your time and being here today. So now we're going to start with the panel question time. So just as a quick note, not everyone needs to answer. Just if a handful of you want to respond to each question, that would be great. So remember, to the audience, feel free to unmute yourself or put a question in the chat. But to kind of kick it off, I will start with a question. Why do you all think offer negotiation is important?
I'll kick it off. So I think of two things. One is, so the two reasons why I think negotiations are important: building wealth and investing in yourself. So your salary relating to building wealth will impact a lot of your first year, for example, if you're graduating from college. So things like your retirement account, future earnings potential, down to your ability to meet your financial needs. So by negotiating, you're putting yourself in a position to start building wealth over a long period of time. And I myself, I'm a first generation college graduate, so negotiating is one of those ways to sort of like break all sorts of generational cycles, and as an ability to sort of meet your financial needs. And investing in yourself, you're being offered a job for a reason, and that's because you are the best candidate for a given position. And by negotiating, I think you're investing in yourself. At the same time, it's like super scary, anxiety provoking. I myself at times in my career have, dealt with like imposter syndrome. So it's super easy to talk your way out of it. But like the one thing that if you take anything away from what I just said, it's just negotiate with an exclamation mark.
I would also add to that, Edwin, I agree with everything you said. And, also once you get into a company at a salary level, it's a lot harder to negotiate once you're there. To say, hey, I'm here and I deserve more money, or I deserve a promotion. You have to work a lot harder and prove yourself. And that can take years, to bring yourself up. And even if it's negotiating $1,000 more, that's groceries, that's a lot of money that can make a big difference. So do it before you get in the door.
Great points, Edwin and Alyssa. Thank you there. Any of our other panelists want to chime in at all? All right. Well, any questions from the audience? Does anyone want to unmute themselves or put a question in the chat?
Hi, Taryn. We do have an audience question that I can read here anonymously. Someone submitted the question that they have gathered from recruiters that potential employers value when we are candid about what we do and don't know, because no one is expected to know everything, especially in computer science. And this person is wondering if this candidness contributes to candidates' appeal as an employee, but then makes it easier for employers to potentially lowball them when it comes to offering, making the offer.
Great question. Any of our panelists want to jump in on that?
I'll take the first cut at this one. So that's a great question, first of all, and I applaud that question, because I think, to me and my managers anyway, honesty, integrity is probably the best policy. We don't want you coming in overinflating your abilities, because that just sets you up for failure. We want to set you up, and we bring you in people into a role. We want to bring you in at the right level, and so we want to know what you know and what you don't know, where your development opportunities are, as well as your strengths are, and then we want to leverage that. So for us, we want you at the right level, but we need to know what you're capable of and not capable of. But if you don't tell us that, or if you try to hide some of that, you could be hurting yourself. So from our perspective, is honesty is the best policy.
Can I add to that? I think too, like in regards to the question, organizations that are large most likely have some sort of salary grading structure. So you might be applying to a certain position, like a software engineer, I think was the example that it talked about. But if you're sort of at the minimum level of qualifications versus the maximum within that type of job, there might be a structure set up where you may be limited in the amount of negotiation ability you have if your experience isn't, at sort of the top of that skill range. So you want to definitely be honest about your abilities, but do keep in mind that depending on the organization and how their comp structure works, you could be limiting yourself as well. So just try to find that balance.
Yeah, and myself working in software engineering is we do what's called a tech interview, after the soft skill interview. And it is very much to see where you land on the technology skills. And so we don't necessarily say we need a lead, developer here. We say we need a developer and, with these sort of skills, and then we're going to find those skills and see where you land in it. And so I would say do your best in the interview process, definitely be honest. Like Dennis said, you don't want to overinflate yourself and then come in and it's just setting yourself up for failure. And just trust that the company is doing their part to keep internal equity. Like Jessica said, if it's a larger company, well, not even if it's a larger company, regardless of the company, right? They want to keep hopefully internal equity and not overpay someone or underpay someone. And so do your best to showcase as many skills as you can, or your ability to just learn quickly or pick up on things. And that can, maybe help show your potential to grow fast.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your thoughts there. And again, that was a great question. So I do see we have a question in the chat. They say, I'm a recent grad working full-time currently at an advertising agency. People tend to move around a lot in this industry. So I'm wondering if you guys have any tips for switching jobs without burning bridges, and how to leverage your past job / skills to negotiate your salary as someone who is still entry level. At what point should you bring this up during the salary, or at what point should you bring this salary up during the interview? And are there any tools, resources you recommend to do your own research on salary ranges?
So I sort of share kind of a, like the advertising industry, public media can be, the type of industry where, because it's nonprofit, folks will start out, on a podcast or as a journalist, and then move on to more of a newspaper or online news agency. So the norm in our industry is perhaps different than the norm in the finance industry or in accounting or what have you. So I think it's great that you recognize that it's understanding the norms in your industry is just really important, because then as a recruiter, I know what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to. And especially for something like audio production, for example, it's more about what have you been able to accomplish in that short amount of time versus how long you've been there. And when it comes to when to bring it up in the conversation, this is somewhat tricky, and I'll share why. One is when I was in, so first of all, like I was just going to comment, like I wish like someone like Alyssa had like talked about benefits when I was graduating from college, because I had like no idea what I was getting into. But you know, when I graduated, it was very much like, well, you know, don't talk about compensation until the last stage of the process. And I thought a lot about that, you know, being on the other side of it and thinking that as an employer, you know, similar to what Hennepin County does, talking about salary at the phone screen stage makes a lot of sense. So that's what we do as our organization, mostly because as a nonprofit, we're competing against like Spotify. So we have to be super transparent and super open about salaries so that we're being respectful of people's time. But I would say, you know, not quite knowing what the industry standards are, it might be perhaps in the second stage of the interview process. I'd actually be curious to hear what other panelists think about that. And in terms of tools and resources, so there are two things I think about. One is there are certainly like paid tools that will give you super concrete and really excellent data, but it's super expensive. Now, the U may or may not provide that service to you, that benchmarking service, which if they do, please take advantage of that, because benchmarking a job can cost up to like $350. I say that knowing that you can also go on salary.com and Glassdoor and look up salaries. The issue with those websites is that you don't really know, like you might see like $90,000 for a software engineer, but you don't know that perhaps that's on the East Coast, or it's for a company that's like has $100 million budget and you're applying to a company with a $50 million revenue budget. So I would say, you know, think more about like get a good benchmark, you know, from a salary.com, but just recognize that like depending on the company's, you know, revenues per year, their own structure and internal equity, that may vary. But I definitely recommend having some sort of just a ballpark of what, you know, those jobs, what their salaries are.
I can kind of piggyback off of what Edwin said with the approach of salary and when to bring it up in the process. So for a while, we were doing it toward the end, and then we got stung a few times where we got to the end, we made an offer and we weren't in their ballpark. End up with some very upset candidates when you do it that way. So we kind of moved that to the front of the process, even to our application stage. When you apply to our position, we're going to ask you to select a range. And the purpose of that is just to have a discussion. So for example, if you're looking for 70 to 80,000 on your application, and I'm going to confirm with you during my call, hey, is this what you need? Because like Edwin said, I don't want to waste your time putting you through a process if I can't hit your target. Knowing that I can only pay 60, what I'm basically going to tell you is, hey, I can't hit your target. You're probably worth every penny of that, but I can't hit it. This job doesn't pay that. We're going to pay closer to 60,000. Knowing that, do you still want to go through the process, or do you want to pull yourself out? So I leave you in the driver's seat for that very reason. And it's not to lowball anybody by any means, but it's just to really save time. And then I think Edwin also mentioned, there's one other thing, I think I just lost my train of thought on it. The salary piece, we purchase salary data. I don't know how many of the other companies do, So we look at several pieces of, what's your education, your experience, the location we're asking you to do the work, the type of work, and then we look at internal equity. What are we paying employees who are currently doing that job compared to you as a candidate? And we look at all that. And then we land on a spot in there. And then we usually get pretty close right from the front end. So if we do get to an offer and we do any kind of negotiation, we're pretty close. And so we can usually fine tune it and find a happy spot in most cases. So that's kind of the approach we take.
Wonderful. Thank you both for your insights to that question. We do have a follow-up question in the chat here. So here's the question. I've noticed that my male peers tend to be less focused on strengthening their areas of weakness, and sometimes that manifests as simply talking less about the things they want to improve about themselves, whether that is skills or character related. Do you think this contributes to a pay difference? And would it be to my benefit to keep my personal goals, skills, and character related to myself?
I want to answer, but I'm not sure I fully understand exactly what the question might be. Is it asking maybe what we think is contributing to a pay difference between males and females? Or sorry, maybe another panelist can jump in.
Yes, it looks like we have a kind of clarification here. So they wonder if potential employers see this as a positive desire for growth, or if they see it as an area of weakness.
Meaning, outlining your areas where you need to improve or you need to gain skills, I believe. Okay. In short, I think the pay differential that we see across the United States is, it's systemic, and there's a lot of things that contribute to it. I don't think it's necessarily that certain groups, and I don't know if that's true. It may be, and I'm not saying it's anecdotal, but I don't know if that's true. If men don't tend to say their weaknesses more than women, or vice versa. But I don't think, to answer your follow-up question, if you're asked, on an area to improve, or an area that you feel like you want to gain a skill in, kind of like what we were saying before, it's best to just be transparent. It's again, it kind of goes back to what we were saying before, like you just want to set yourself up for success. And if there's something you're still learning or you don't know, that's okay. Because most recruiters, most hiring managers really fundamentally know that you hire for fit and not skills, because you can often train on the skills. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add on that, though.
Yeah, so we've been rethinking our hiring process quite a bit, from the perspective of how do you build a recruiting process that is inclusive, more inclusive than even than what we've had, or what we see out there. And when I think about someone talking about their personal goals, their areas of growth, it tells me a couple of things. One, they have a level of self-awareness. That's a really positive thing. Two, they have sort of this like relentless pursuit of something, right? It's not necessarily perfection. That's not really what we're looking for. But to me, I see it actually as a value add, that someone is in tune with what they know and what they don't know. And I would kind of frame that as like emotional intelligence. It's like, I think in a lot of workplaces, that is the piece that leads to, it's like the invisible element that leads to success, is like someone can have, the best pitching skills or the best like tech skills, but if they don't have the ability to work well with their colleagues, or like when I think about that in the workplace, if someone is on a project and they're just terrible at missing deadlines, and they're unwilling to admit that or work on that, that's going to be a problem down the road, right? So to me, and how we think about it at our company, and I think in a lot of companies as well, is being in tune and upfront with what you know, what you don't know, what you are experiencing, what you're not necessarily experiencing, but have a willingness to learn. It makes for a richer conversation. And I think it's more of like we would take that in and say, yeah, you know what, like that self-awareness is really, really important. And on the flip side, a lack of self-awareness is a bit of a red flag, because we all, like, no one's perfect. We all have areas of growth. And being able to talk about it, one, is super scary. I get it. But it also is a level of vulnerability that I think for a lot of workplaces is desired.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your thoughts on that question. So I am going to pose a question for the panel here. So I know in one of our original chat questions, it talked about not wanting to burn bridges. So can a few of you share with us the potential short and long-term implications of candidates reneging on a job offer after it has already been accepted?
I can start this one out. Definitely, it's frustrating as a recruiter when this happens. I mean, obviously, as a candidate, you need to, pursue whatever is the best option for yourself. But you also want to think about long-term as well. As an organization that, has had multiple rounds of interviews, decided on a candidate, got lots of buy-in from all of the decision makers, gone through the whole process that happens on the back end of, negotiating, confirming a salary, benefits, start date, to have a candidate change their mind, accept a different offer. It definitely is frustrating when you calculate the amount of time that an organization has invested in you as a candidate between multiple people interviewing you and all of that work. So if, it needs to happen, or if you get a better offer, you definitely need to make sure that you're very tactful about that process. And I mean, ideally don't, but, you obviously, like I said, have to go with what is the best option for yourself. But just keep in mind that, that could potentially cause that supervisor not to be interested in you in the future. If they move around to another organization, they might remember you, and, maybe they don't have great feelings about that situation. So definitely just consider, all the consequences of that decision. Supervisors, I think, get a little bit more frustrated with it than recruiters, just because, most supervisors don't make a lot of hires throughout their career. Depending on where they work, I guess. So if they get really excited about you to the point where, they want to bring you on their team, it definitely, honestly, it can hurt their feelings, right? So just keep in mind about that. I would say if you think that it's possible that could happen at the beginning, I would just say be upfront and say that, you might, if you're interviewing with multiple organizations at a time, just let the hiring team know that. I think it just sort of sets the groundwork for if that does happen, they have a little bit more explanation. And definitely don't ghost and not show up on your first day. That will definitely have a lot more negative feelings than if you explain why you made the decision that you made. And, it just kind of humanizes your decision a little bit more. But yes, it does suck for the hiring team for sure.
I'll jump into that. So I've actually done that myself. It happens. And I've been on the other side too, as a recruiter, I've been ghosted too. So what I would say, and how I went about it too, personally, is, have a phone conversation, maybe non-COVID time, grab a coffee with the hiring manager or the recruiter, and be open to, because they're probably going to try to convince you again to change your mind. So be open to that conversation and be ready with if you've truly made up your mind that this is not going to be an offer, think about the reasons behind it, because it's probably, largely for a lot of us, it's probably money but again, remember those first couple slides of this, that there's a lot more to the job offer, you know, whether it's like even just culturally, the way the company or organization is set up, or just industry that you're working in, or just that, for me, it was decided, you know, I was deciding to stay with my current employer, and not job search at all, and not, you know, not leave that current employer. And I really needed to explain why, even though I just spent the whole interview process saying I'm ready to leave. So it can be confusing, and like Jessica said, frustrating for the hiring manager. They want you. So just keep an open mind, and come up, you know, have your reasons very well articulated and ready to go. Because they're going to want to try to convince you to stay or to keep your decision.
Wonderful. Thank you both for those insights surrounding kind of reneging and how that kind of short-term and long-term implications. And Alyssa, for your own personal experience there, that's great to hear. So kind of wrapping up our panel time here. So a final kind of question, or kind of series, or two questions. So you can answer one or both. But what advice would you share with candidates as they prepare to negotiate job offers? And what factors contribute to a successful negotiation?
I would say practice. And no, it's not weird to script it out. I script out a lot of things. In fact, I literally scripted out this response. Actually, most of the people that you hear or see that sound like they're speaking off the cuff, they've scripted what they're saying. So I totally am on board for, you know, scripting, either whether it's a phone call or an email, just making sure that you know exactly what you want to say and how you want to say it. Be cognizant of timelines. So if a deadline is not shared, so you get an offer, yay, wonderful, and the hiring manager doesn't say, get back to us within 24 hours or 48 hours, ask for a deadline, just so that you both know sort of what the time crunch is. This one's a little more controversial, but an employer who rescinds your offer because you are negotiating does not deserve your time and skills. So just, you know, more to the nod of like negotiate. Think about time off as you negotiate as well. So I know a lot of people think mostly about like salary. Sometimes, especially in the nonprofit world, we can't really move on salary, but perhaps we can move on vacation time. A no to your request is not a no to you. And that is the like hardest thing to be okay with, but it's true. And then going back to something shared earlier, ask about how salary increases work at the company, or what the compensation philosophy is like, just so you have a sense of like, is it a merit-based system? Is it a cost of living situation? Are you all paying within a certain percentile of, the benchmarks or whatever? And the last one is kind of related to benefits, but ask for if they offer a patient advocacy program. It's kind of a popular-ish program that employers are offering, which is like, even before you get on the benefits, like, you know, these companies will help you figure out which health plan is best for you. They can help you negotiate, you know, medical bills and kind of navigate the wild world of healthcare in this country. Yes, that's what I got.
Those are great things, Edwin. Thanks. I just thought of something too, you know, because I this topic about negotiation and how's the best approach to do it. So one of the things, maybe for our company, we're more structured, so there's not as much to negotiate. Things like our benefits are pretty straightforward, so we're not able to negotiate a lot of that. So what I would say as a candidate, ask your recruiter, employer, whoever's extending your offer, hey, what types of things are able to be negotiated as part of this offer? And then they can tell you, they can kind of guide you, well, that, you know, we can probably do some on salary or time off or whatever that looks like, because you just may not know what that company's rules of engagement are as far as what they can or cannot, rather than just coming out, firing off A, B, and C. Hey, I'd like to get more of this, more of that, more of whatever. And they just have to tell you, no, we can't do this, can't do that, can't do the other. And to Edwin's point, a big one I was going to bring up is don't take anything personal. If you are told no about a particular question, it's just in reference to that question. It's not to you as a human being or what necessarily you bring to the table. It's just kind of the parameters that company has to work with.
Can I go next? So I definitely want to echo exactly what Evan and Dennis said. I think that is great advice. I think one thing that I would add too is to frame your negotiation around what you can bring to the organization and your skill set. And I mean, as somebody who graduated college with lots of student debt, you definitely can't go into an interview and say like, well, I need this much money because I have to pay, you know, this monthly bill on my student debt. Like you want to frame it around what you can provide to the organization and where your experience is, and not necessarily your personal situation. Though obviously that is the driving factor for why you might want a certain dollar amount, but just really try to frame it around the job and your particular skills or professional experience. And then I think the other thing that was mentioned too is, you know, if they say no, just keep in mind, you know, I think Edwin and Dennis both said, it's not a no to you. They might not have the ability to negotiate. If, you know, hopefully that would not cause them to rescind an offer. And I would agree that, you know, if they rescind their offer just because you're negotiating, that you probably shouldn't work there. But, you know, they might say no, but keep in mind all the other benefits that could be included or negotiated.
I agree with everything everyone said. I have two other things to add is that we talked about, you know, if you're asked what range, you know, are you comfortable with even before an offer, just remember to pick a range that you're actually comfortable with. You know, if you say 50 to 60,000, be prepared to be offered 50,000, unfortunately. But be ready to, you know, negotiate just how everyone just said with all those tips. And then one last tip I would give for just a successful negotiation is when you get the offer via phone, you know, say you're really excited about it and you want to get back to them. And then like Edwin was talking about, come up with a time frame. I would recommend to never take the offer first conversation, because even if you decide to take what they're offering, it's good to just give yourself a night to just let it sink in and think about any anything else you could negotiate on that everyone else has already mentioned.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your responses there. So that is the conclusion of our employer panel portion. Thank you to our panelists for answering all of these wonderful questions. And I hope everyone in the audience got some really great insights. And remember, this panel portion is recorded, so we will upload it and you will have access to it if you want to refer back. And I will leave it up to the panelists if they want to put in their contact information for any further questions that audience members may have. Feel free to put your email in the chat or however you would like to be contacted if you want to.